Hi, Mirav.
Hey Julia,
How are you?
I'm good. I just been watching the news. It's going pretty crazy right now.
Yes, it's getting pretty crazy.
Looks like we need dialogue more than ever, huh?
Yeah, really topical discussion.
Awesome.
How's being at home?
It's being at home. I mean, to be totally honest, like as long as I get out for like a couple hours in the day, I'm okay.
Yeah, I feel that. Are you doing anything this summer, or are you just staying home? Or
Well, I was supposed to go to Israel this summer, as you probably knew, but obviously that's not happening.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, I'm just staying at home doing college stuff, just chilling out. Honestly, I haven't had a summer in a very long time where I don't have anything. So it's
Mhm.
actually kind of nice. I've never really spent the summer here, so it'll be interesting. It'll be really hot too.
Yeah, it'll be very hot. What were you gonna do in Israel?
I was gonna go on the US-wide trip,
Oh,
pilgrimage.
right.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I was planning on going this summer to Israel too, just for fun. But yeah, that's not happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oof. Let me make sure. When did you want me to have those pictures up?
Um,
Do you have a specific time?
Maybe I can let Emily has like a short like 2 minute promo video for Seeds of Peace to play, and then
Got
I
it.
can have you introduce yourself, and then you can show the photos, and then I like go back
Cool.
and forth asking you guys
Cool.
questions. Cool.
Awesome. Nice. This should be fun. A
Yeah.
little bit of a different conflict to distract people from the conflict that's going on right now.
Yeah, exactly.
And who's your friend? Who's from CCP?
Her name is
Hi,
Emily. Hi.
Her name's Emily.
I'm
Yeah,
mute.
she's coming on in a minute. She actually just
Okay,
texted me.
cool. And what does she do at CCP? I didn't know if she.
She's like a senior coordinator, I think is her official
Okay.
title, but she helps with like
Yep.
fundraisers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool.
She's been there for like 2 years now.
Nice.
So, yeah. Hello.
I'm muted, of course. Hi, Rob. It's nice to meet you.
Hi, it's nice to meet you too.
Thanks for doing this event tonight. I'm really excited.
Anytime I get to talk about CCP is a good time. So
For sure, for sure. How are you guys doing?
Good.
Yeah?
I
Good.
should have worn one of my CCP shirts because I have like 8 of them, but they're literally all in the wash, of course.
Of course. Of
It's
course.
so funny. I like people are like, Mira, why do you wear the same shirt all the time? I'm like, no, I'm wearing a different shirt. It just looks the same.
I swear, I swear. Just
Same thing happens with the sweatshirt. It's like, no, I'm wearing a different sweat. Like, I wash my clothes. I don't know.
just gotta have one for every day of the week.
I have one extra
Yeah.
too in color games, so I'm covered.
Of course. Well, next time. Next time.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
Me and Mirav were just talking about how talking about conflict resolution feels very applicable right now. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah, I've been thinking about that a lot today. Yeah.
Wow, a lot of people are signing on. This is great.
Yeah.
Hi, Greta.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thanks. Where's my girlfriend? I'm not gonna watch this because she's not wearing the appropriate t-shirt. Where's your t-shirt?
They're in the wash.
I heard. That's a poor excuse, Mayra.
I'm sorry, my family does the wash all the time.
That you should start doing your laundry, Toots.
I am doing my laundry. My dad's exercising so much that all of his stuff is always in the laundry. So I can't even get time, even if I try. But I do have my Seeds of Peace bracelet that I've worn every single day since. I don't know.
Okay, we'll have to accept that, honey.
You know, I don't have my Seeds of Peace gear either. I used to live in, or I was living in New York City. And now during quarantine, I've been out with my parents in Long Island. And I'm realizing my Seeds of Peace sweatshirt and I have a hat too. And they're both left in my apartment in the city, which is
Okay.
a foolish error.
You could do like a green screen background of like the Seeds of Peace.
There we go.
I wear my stuff so often now though that like my sweatshirt's like almost like worn out. Like it's not even a sweatshirt anymore. It's just like
It's another t-shirt.
yeah, basically. And I have the sweatpants too, but they're not green or anything. They're just gray. So yeah, I know, disappointment, huh?
Yeah.
I think I don't need chocolate. So, all right.
We'll wait like a couple more minutes and see if anyone else gets on the call.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks again for organizing this.
Yeah, no problem.
I'm listening. I'm just gardening while I'm doing that, okay?
Okay.
It's with me, but my husband's hawking me to finish the garden, so I'll do
Oh.
that. Hi, Greta.
Hi,
All right,
sweet-
I'm gonna put myself on mute.
Okay.
Good luck tomorrow, Greta.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Where did I leave my phone?
Greta, what's tomorrow?
Oh, just a little surgery.
Oh.
Mm.
Nothing important. Okay, I want to make sure this is real.
Put mine on bugs.
Yeah. Okay.
It's soft enough. The lime's soft, put that coffee in it?
Maybe I need not.
Okay.
Can you see? Hey, Rob?
I'll go on the other side.
Okay.
Julia, will you make me a co-host so that when Emily's done with her thing, I can share the pictures? easily?
Yeah. Emily, do you have that promo video or do you want me to pull it up?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Do you want me to play it or do you want me to send you the link and then?
If you have it pulled up, it's probably easier for
Yeah.
you. It'll let you. I'll make you a co-host too. So you have
Awesome.
all the special powers that I have.
So many powers.
I hope I wield it well.
Some people don't do well with power, Julia.
It's true.
Yeah, no, that's true.
They let it overtake them.
Hi, Rabbi Jenny.
Hi, Ema.
You guys zooming in from different rooms of the house? Good times.
All right, I think we can get started. And people can join, while I'm doing my little intro. But thank you guys for coming to this discussion. This is part of Beth Meyer's speaker nights on Mondays. We're gonna keep trying to do it throughout the summer. So if you have any ideas of presentations you want to give, or that somebody would want to give, let me know and we can do it on a Monday. This one is about Seeds of Peace, and I have my friend Emily Umansky, who works for Seeds of Peace, and Mayrav, who was a participant in Seeds of Peace, and we're gonna talk about it. So Emily, if you want to start introducing yourself.
Sure. So my name is Emily, and I'm excited to be here with all of you guys. I work for an organization called Seeds of Peace, which some of you know about, some of you may not know about, but we are a leadership development and conflict resolution organization that was founded in 1993 to work with young Israelis and Palestinians and help them form friendships across lines of divide in the hopes that they would be able to create change in their society and one day be leaders that see each other as friends and not enemies. And that was the core idea at the beginning, and we've expanded beyond Israel and Palestine to work with lots of different communities. But that core idea of forming friendships and bonds across lines of difference is still at the core of what we do, both with young people and also with educators who we see as key components in change and in helping the next generation learn how to lead change themselves. And I can show a quick video that kind of gives the history of Seeds of Peace and explains a little bit more about our core programming. And then I'm very excited to hear from Mayrav about her experience at camp and what it's like to be a seed and everything that she's been through and learned. And it's always best to hear seeds talk about their experience firsthand. So I'm very excited. So I'll share my screen here and play the video for you all. Okay, can you see the screen? Yep, okay. Let me refresh.
In 1993, journalist and author John Wallach had an idea.
If you begin to know your enemy, if you begin to hear your enemy, if you begin to understand your enemy, it's inevitable that you will begin to feel some empathy.
Could a new generation of leaders be cultivated? Could peace grow from the ground up?
This is going to be a test whether the sound of peace can be louder than the horror of war.
It was an audacious goal, requiring great courage. Over the years, Seeds met world leaders as they developed the skills to become leaders themselves. Our seeds grew, and we as an organization have grown along with them, offering year-round programming within their communities, accelerating their impact as professionals in their fields. Today, 25 years after the first seed was planted, after 46 teens from the Middle East dared to dream, the Seeds of Peace experiment has firmly taken root. Our seeds are becoming the change they so desperately want to see. They are becoming the leaders our world so desperately needs. Now, more than ever.
So that's just a little introduction to who we are. And now I would love to turn it over to Mayrav and hear all about your experience.
So yeah, hi, I'm Mayrav, if you don't know me already. I'm the daughter of Rabbis Eric and Jenny Solomon, one of whom is here in a different room, but also on Zoom. I'm 17 years old, and this past summer, I went to Seeds of Peace camp in Maine. It was a truly transformative and amazing experience, and I love talking about it, so this is very fun for me. So I wanted to start with just the basics, right? When you hear about Seeds of Peace, just like we saw in the video, it definitely has a lot to do with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. But what Seeds does beautifully, honestly, is mixes these ideas of having just a fun summer camp with also the heavy ideas of conflict resolution between the Israeli Palestinians. We have Jordanians, Egyptians. We also have the Indian Pakistanis. I personally was lucky enough to have my hands in both pies. So I was in a Indian Pakistani bunk, but I was in the Middle Eastern or Israeli Palestinian, Egyptian, Jordanian, and American dialogue group. I want to walk through what some days went like and some things that were consistent at Seeds. Because it's such a short period, they want to pack everything they can into it. So most days don't look very alike, but something that is consistent is having 2.5 hours of dialogue every single day. Sometimes it's in the morning, sometimes it's after lunch, but that's consistent. So you have 14 dialogue sessions. Also, there are other things that are consistent, including culture night, which is where campers can show off their culture and wear things from their culture. At Seeds of Peace, it's against the rules to wear anything related to your nationality, identity, other things like that. Of course, if you're wearing like a hijab for your religion or anything like that is, of course, okay, or as we would say in the Jewish community, kosher. But you can't wear like American flag t-shirts or anything like that. And that's why, if you were here earlier, you might have heard about my 8 shirts from Seeds of Peace. They do provide us with all the same shirts and the same sweatshirts. So all of us were wearing the exact same shirt the entirety of camp, which definitely instilled the value of looking at our similarities more than our differences and kind of stripping away our nationality or identity from ourselves and just becoming who we are as just people without, I'm Israeli or I'm American. I'm a human being. I'm a kid at a summer camp who just wants to have fun. Normal days at Seeds of Peace, we'd have meals just like normal. We'd meet at the flag every morning, and then at lunch and then at dinner. It's a group of, we had, I think it was 192 kids, but we had every single morning, afternoon, and evening, we would meet at the flag and get announcements and sit with our bunks and get ready. We had 3 different groups that were pretty important to solidifying our schedules. So we had one group, which was our dialogue group, which stayed the same the entirety of camp. And that was honestly what's now really my family. I love them so much, and we became such a tight-knit group. We also have our bunks, obviously, the places where I, slept and, lived basically, which are solid groups. And then something that's really cool about Seeds of Peace is that we have our table groups. So you sat at the same table the entirety of camp, but what the people who were at my table were from anywhere. So it didn't matter what dialogue group, what nationality you were, there were no proportions or quantities or quotas. So there were, Pakistanis, Palestinians, Israelis, Egyptians, right? And we're all just sitting at the table together, just eating food. Something that really encapsulates like what Seeds of Peace is like is that you might go into 2.5 hours of really intense dialogue, yelling at each other, crying. A lot of people like to make fun of me. I cried a lot during Seeds of Peace because it's a very intense environment. But a lot of emotion. And then they tell you, you guys, you have a 5-minute break before we're going to go let you loose on the field to go play soccer. And so it's a very continuous, fluid schedule that allows you to ride the roller coaster of your emotions throughout the day. So you're never really left alone. You also do all your activities during the day with your dialogue group. So whether it's, playing soccer, playing basketball, doing arts and crafts, you're doing that with your dialogue group. So you're bonding not only there in the room, that we have these dialogue huts. You're not only bonding there, but you're bonding outside of it around other things that are just very universal. The only other thing I want to add before I'll let Emily jump in here is that we also this thing, oh my gosh, now I'm forgetting the name for it, but I'm just going to describe it. So it's basically where we as a dialogue group get to do these trust exercises and leadership exercises together. And the counselors who are in charge of that for your dialogue group talk to your dialogue facilitators and figure out what are the dynamics in dialogue that they need help with. And they figure out physical manifestations of those things that are happening in dialogue that need to be fixed to be able to solve them in a more physical way. A good example of this is at the beginning of camp, my group was, not the fun and friendly, family it is now. And we were supposed to do this trust exercise where we had to walk on logs. Some of us had blindfolds on, some of us couldn't speak. I had a blindfold on. My Palestinian friends had a blindfold on. And you had to get all the way across this like log wire, all the way across everybody without touching the ground. We did not do that the first time around, but at the end of camp we did, and it really just made my experience whole, which was really amazing. So I'll let Emily jump in here.
Thanks for giving us like a brief overview. So I want to take a step back. So before you came to Seeds of Peace, how did you, for both of you, I guess we'll start with Emily, how did you hear about it and what made you want to get involved in this organization?
I first heard about Seeds of Peace while I was living in Israel with Julia, actually. We were on an English teaching program together in Israel the school year of 2017 to 2018. While I was there, I was just getting really interested in peace-building initiatives, in any sort of organization that was bringing Israelis and Palestinians together, and especially working in the school system there, and seeing how segregated it was, how Jewish Israelis, and at least within, the 67 borders, you might say, or, within Israel proper, where we were living, how the Palestinian citizens of Israel or the Arab Israelis had a different school system than the Jewish Israelis, and how I just saw that as something that was clearly propagating conflict, because if young kids never met each other, didn't grow up together, didn't go to school together, then of course they weren't going to learn that they could be friends with the other side, or that there were similarities, or that they didn't have to be enemies. So I was just getting really invested in anything that was bringing young people especially together. And then I heard about Seeds of Peace, and when I was looking at jobs to apply to when I was coming back to the States, I saw that they had an opening and was fortunate enough to start working here. So, yeah.
For me, my mom can attest to this. I was not exactly excited at the beginning of going to Seeds of Peace. I had heard about it. I thought it was cool, but I was ready to go to my last year of summer camp at Camp Ramada Rome that I've been looking forward to for a very long time. I was ready. And, eventually she wore me down like any Jewish mother would. And she was like, Meirav, you will regret it if you don't just apply. So I was like, fine, Ema, I'll apply. I apply. I start to think about Seeds of Peace and how it could be a reality for my summer. And I start to get excited, start to reach out to other people. And then, I got the email that said that I had gotten into Seeds of Peace. And I was like, okay, summer plans out of the way. I'm going to Seeds of Peace, and that is that. And honestly, probably one of the best decisions of my entire life, along with my decision to go to my semester school. So thank you, Ema, for pushing me to do that. But definitely such a transformative experience. I really can't put into words. I'm going to try to tonight so I can share my experience with all of you. But I really encourage you all to do some research into Seeds of Peace. There's a lot of programs that you can do, even if you're not part of the original cohort at camp, and it's just a really amazing organization.
Yeah, so Meirav, do you want to tell us maybe about like the friendships and relationships you made at camp? And I know you have some photos that you want to share with us also. So.
The photos are very close to my heart because they remind me of all the time that we were together. Yeah, so the friendships at Seeds of Peace definitely start out I'm going to share my screen so that I can show you all some pictures if I can. Okay, while I'm doing that, I'll just talk. Friendships at Seeds of Peace start out like any friendship would, right? You're just meeting them, you're talking to them, you say hi, especially when you're in your dialogue group, because those are your, I wouldn't say those are your real friends, but they're the people that you're spending the most time with overall in intense discussions. So you want to be really, knowing them, and you're going to know them for a very long time. I honestly have never felt so held by a community until Seeds of Peace. Truly, these people that I met are some of the most amazing people I've ever met in my entire life. I'm constantly inspired by them. They're also really challenging people. And it's really, really hard to be friends and really close friends, almost family, with people who disagree about your right to have, a protected, safe place, people who already have stereotypes, already have things, that they think about you, people who think that you shouldn't even be there for the conversation. And dialogue was really, it's really tough for anyone there, but every dialogue group is different, especially at Seeds. So, we were encouraged not to talk to each other about our dialogue group experiences other than, within our group, because dialogue experiences are so different. One person can change it. Our dialogue group is extremely passionate, very emotional in, every way. I was the one with the tissues, that was fine, but it took us 7 dialogue sessions, so about half of our entirety of our dialogue sessions, to be able to finally talk about stories, finally talk about ourselves. I don't know if you can see now, this is me and my friends. This one I have my cursor on is Leia. She's one of my best friends. She lives in Philly. This is Amjad. He is Palestinian. Right now he is in Turkey because he could not, actually, unfortunately, he couldn't return back from, he couldn't return back after Seeds of Peace to his home because he's originally from Gaza, so it wasn't safe. They weren't allowing him back. This is another group, another photo that I just really love. This is my friend Shams. He's Egyptian. This is Allah. He's Arab Israeli.
I don't think the photos changed for us.
Oh, have they not changed?
No.
Oh, wait, okay. Maybe, okay. Bring this to the front.
Or you can maybe try unsharing and resharing.
Yeah. Okay, let's try that again. So this, can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, so the one on the totally far left is Shams. He's an Egyptian. Then we've got Allah. He's an Arab Israeli. He's also a Druze. This is Shad, and she's an Arab Israeli. And that's Tamir, and that's Leia, and then that's Tamir. He's Israeli. And I'll just stop sharing so I can just talk. But there were so many things about Seeds that have really changed my perspective on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and just in general conflict resolution, as I'm sure it's supposed to do, which is, you succeeded, Seeds of Peace. Some of the things that I really took to heart were the power of empathy, the power of vulnerability, and this whole idea that I think Emily touched on just earlier, that it's very hard to ask someone to know something about somebody that they've never met, right? If I've never tasted peanut butter before, and I hate peanut butter, just on the very concept of it, it's very hard to ask me to be like, oh, I'll try peanut butter, right? So I know that's a kind of simple explanation, but it's very hard for you to ask somebody like my friend Amjad, who's literally had rockets fired at him, who's been helped by Hamas because they're the only ones who provide him and his family with water and supplies, who's only ever seen Israel as an attacking force. It's so hard for me in dialogue to say, Amjad, why can't you see the Israel that I see, right? The shuk, the food, the culture, the dancing. Why can't you see what I see? But, you know, it's very hard to ask that of somebody. And so that's why I think Seeds of Peace is really amazing, right? It takes that equation out. It says, we're putting you in the situation where you will experience the other side. You will see every single side, which there are many. It's a very naive thing to think that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is only about Israelis and Palestinians. It's about the Jordanians in my group whose grandparents were from Palestine when it was, you know, a long time ago in 1948, who got kicked out of their homes. It's Egyptians who are still reeling from the Israeli-Egyptian war, right? And the Yom Kippur War. This conflict touches so many parts of the world and so many parts of ourselves that really in dialogue, it was just trying to hear each other out, listen, sit, not jump to judgment, and look at each other as humans. I prepared to share a couple stories with you all. I don't know if you want me to do that now or later, but I prepared to share 3 different stories that really are just, you know, heartbreaking, but really give you a window into what sitting in the dialogue hut and sitting with all these people was like. The first story that I'm going to tell you is of one of my very good friends, Yasmin, who's Israeli. And she was 7 when her brother died. Her brother was in the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces. He finished his service and was coming home, literally driving home, and got in a car accident when she was 7 or 8. And this really changed how she saw not only just, obviously it changed her life. It was her brother, and that kind of loss is something you don't just, you know, jump back from. But also, it definitely sparked her interest in learning about what is the IDF doing, what's Israel doing. Her brother was known for being extremely empathetic in the Israeli Defense Forces and only attacking if necessary, and she really committed herself to being like that, which is why she went to Seeds of Peace. The second story I want to tell you is a little bit more serious. It's my friend Amjad, who you saw before with the kufiya, in between me and my friend Leah. He is from Gaza, and when he was around 7 or 8, his family was living in a house, and they got a call at around 2 in the morning, and that told them that they had about 2 minutes to leave their house before the Israeli Defense Forces were going to send a rocket. So Amjad didn't grab anything, neither did his parents or his brothers and sisters. They ran outside of their house and watched as their house was blown up. This obviously is a horrible circumstance. I know for a fact that Amjad's family, you know, that we don't know what anybody was thinking in that, but we had worked to build that trust in that dialogue hut so that he could share that story. It took so long to figure out what had happened to Amjad because it took a long time to create the trust and create the community and the vulnerability and the space so that he could share that story. For a long time, he was the one who was getting really upset. He cried. He, you know, yelled at a lot of us, told us that we didn't understand. But once we were able to create that comfortable environment, he felt safe to share that story with us, which is why it means so much to me. Obviously, this also gives you a little bit of a window into the kids at Seeds of Peace, especially the Israelis, Palestinians. all have some touch of trauma from this conflict that has either been passed down by their parents and their grandparents or that they've experienced themselves, which makes it infinitely harder to work past, which means we're not just sitting down with people who have seen, in the news about this stuff. They're experiencing it. They've felt like they're under fire, which makes it so much harder to bring down those barriers, but it also makes it so much more important to break down those barriers and to show them that, my friend Orr, who is in my dialogue group, who's going into the IDF in a year, that he can hug my friend Amjad, and Amjad knows that Orr is not going to hurt him. Orr isn't the IDF, Orr isn't a future soldier who's going to check him at a checkpoint. Orr is his friend who he played soccer with, right? And that's what I think Seeds of Peace really does an amazing job of building up. The third and final story that I wanted to share was about one of my really close friends, Amichai. He's Israeli. And it took, honestly, until we had 3 more dialogue sessions left, and his Israeli friends knew the story, but, weren't sharing it because it was his own, and they encouraged him to share it. And I was lucky enough to be sitting right next to him and to hold his hand while he told it. His brother was extremely anti-violence, did not want to join the IDF at all. But as most of us know, that is required of all Israeli citizens who reach the age of 18. He did not want to join the IDF. And one of the things that can get you out of service for the IDF is if you have a mental illness or mental health issue that incapacitates your ability to serve. And Amichai's brother knew that. And so he drove himself to having severe anxiety and depression to be able to escape being in the IDF, because he was so scared of being a part of that kind of organization. Not necessarily that he was scared of what the IDF might do, but what he would have to do, holding the guns, being at the checkpoint, looking at other people and having to decide whether they lived or died. And Amichai's brother still didn't end up serving in the IDF, but still is dealing with the after effects of having to almost fabricate this mental illness on himself so well that he actually retained a lot of that trauma and a lot of that hurt. And I just think these 3 stories that I've shared with you, Yasmin's, Amjad's, and Amichai's, really show there's so much pain here and there's so much suffering that it's very important for me to share these stories, because I think objectively as humans, we all feel sad about that. We feel pain. We hurt for these people as human beings, right? Like, I could have told you Amjad's story, left out that he was Palestinian, left out that he was from Gaza, all of these things, and you would just feel hurt. This kid lost his home. Amichai lost the way that his brother was, this happy, playful brother, and now he is stuck in his room. Yasmin lost her brother and is now having to deal with that grief along with dealing with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict right next door, right? These are things that as humans, we can just relate to, right? On a human level, which is why it's so important for me to share these stories, because this is the kind of empathy that we're really lacking, right? The empathy that says, like, I feel for you, like, this hurts, right? Doesn't matter if you were Egyptian, Jordanian, Palestinian, Israeli, American, like, objectively, that hurts. And when we got to those kind of conclusions in my dialogue group, and we started to understand each other in those human ways, that's when we found real connection. That's when we became a real family and we're able to become friends, because we saw each other as humans, as not just the enemy who's trying to kill me, or the guy who's going to grow up to become, a soldier, right? Yeah. Sorry, that was really long.
For sharing those stories. No, those are really great and really personal. I have 2 more questions, and then I'll open the floor for any questions anyone else has. So my next question, and this is for both Emily and Meirav, Seeds of Peace is not technically a Jewish organization, but obviously Jewish identification and your Jewish identity plays a big role in how you show up in spaces. So I was wondering if you could both talk about how you bring your Jewish identity into the Seeds of Peace, either by working there or by attending camp.
Meirav, you want to go or do you want me to go first?
You can go. I gotta take a couple deep breaths.
Thank you for sharing those stories. I hear the empathy in your voice, and they're painful. You're right, and it's incredible that they shared them with you and that you shared them with us. So thank you. Yeah, I mean, my Jewish identity is very important to me, and it definitely plays a role in how I relate to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and also how I relate to these larger questions, no matter what the conflict is, of justice and human rights. And I mean, I first got very interested in wanting to work in peace building around Israel and Palestine because I felt this deep connection to Israel and I wanted to understand the land. I want to understand the people. I want to feel proud of the country. And the first time that I visited Israel, I just felt like I came away with more questions than answers, and that I was seeing it through a Jewish lens, and that I knew that something felt like it was missing or that there was more to the story. And so ever since my first visit there, I've just really been on a personal learning journey of trying to understand as much as I can about the Israeli narrative and the Palestinian narrative. And like Meirav said, that it's not just two sides, that there's a lot of complication within each of those sides. There's many different opinions within Israeli society, and the same among Palestinian society, and so many other layers of complication, of identity, of history. So it's a lot, and I've been just really on a journey to try to understand as much as I can, because I feel like this personal connection and this responsibility to help make Israel the best that it can be, to make it something I am proud of and want to be a part of. It's this feeling that we've grown up being taught that it's our homeland and that we can be a light unto the nations, and so like, okay, let's not mess that up. And then just beyond that, just this really deep sense of needing to do what's right and ethical and speak up for the rights of Palestinians for the same way that Jews want a homeland and want self-determination. And I want that for my people. I want that for them too. So it's difficult sometimes when I'm listening to my Palestinian colleagues talking about their pain and what they want and what they envision for their country. And sometimes it's difficult to hear, but we have to keep listening. And something we talk about a lot at Seeds of Peace is in terms of our vision of what conflict is. It's not necessarily a negative thing. It can become negative, as we know, but conflict itself can be neutral or it can be positive. And if you keep coming back and if you keep engaging with the other side and then you work towards something positive, then it's a good thing, that you're listening, that you're engaging, that you're hearing other perspectives that push you together, push each other to be better. I could speak more about it, but I'd love to hear what Meirav has to say.
So I'm going to talk about my Jewish identity in terms of Seeds of Peace Camp in two different ways. One is a little bit more fun, so I'll start off with that one. When I went to Seeds of Peace and met all these Israelis, they heard my name was Meirav. They were like, "Are you Israeli?" A lot of kids thought I was Palestinian, which also got me a lot of things. When I told them I was two rabbis' daughters, they were like, "Oh my gosh, she's probably extremely religious, like she's all the way over here." But of course, conservative in Israel means a lot different things than does here in Raleigh, North Carolina. The craziest thing was going to my first Kabbalat Shabbat service at Seeds of Peace. So you have, right, my dad's laughing because it's very funny. So you have, right, like secular Israelis who, you know, practice in the way that they do. You have like me, right, my only self who's, you know, used to her conservative Jewish and North Carolina way of life. You have a lot of Reform Jews from the East Coast in the United States. And then you have conservative Israelis who are conservative Jews, which is a very different thing than American conservative Jews. Anyways, as Jews always do, we argue. We're very different people. It's in our nature. But when you combine all of these kids who are used to doing things their way, we are all very stubborn, we are all very strong-minded, things don't exactly go as planned. That Kabbalat Shabbat service was, you know, understanding it a little bit, interesting. Definitely gave me a window into the complications in even the Jewish identity at Seeds of Peace, because, you know, there's a lot of sweeping motions that you can say. You can say all Jews think this way, which is never, you know, possible. We all disagree on something. But then you can say all Palestinians think this way. You know, you can make these overall statements. But to go to that Kabbalat Shabbat service and see everybody praying in a different way, getting annoyed at each other in a different way, being offended in a different way, you know, praying a different way, wanting to do a different tune, wanting to do a different prayer, like all these different types of things, right? Just showed how many, you know, complications and folds and nuances there were to even the Jewish community, which just shows, you know, those two sides aren't even two sides. It's like hundreds of millions of sides. The second part that I want to talk about was obviously my Jewish identity and dialogue, right? Because it's really hard to sit there and listen to people talk about a country, a place that you've heard for your entire life is this beautiful land of milk and honey, and it's not, right? I've been to Israel twice. I loved it while I was there. One time that I was there there during a Gaza war. So I definitely was on a little bit of the receiving end of some rockets, but I felt completely safe. And I wasn't at the age where I could truly understand what was going on. But you know, overall, it's really hard, right? Because I'm sitting there thinking about, you know, Israel, we pray to this country, we pray for this country, we hear it countless times in the Torah, in everything we do, in all of our prayers. And I'm thinking this is like an amazing idea of a place where I'm accepted. I don't have to be scared of anti-Semites. I can just be in a place with, you know, people of my community, people who understand me. And I'm sitting there listening to one of my friends, Sadine, who's telling me about how she wakes up at 4 a.m. to go to school every day and has to pass through 3 checkpoints, and how she's been sexually assaulted at those checkpoints. And I'm sitting there, you know, jaw dropped, right? Because that's not what I see. You know, when I see IDF soldiers in the streets, I feel completely safe. That was actually what made me feel safe while we were in Israel. You know, I have friends who have been in the IDF who I consider very close to me. And yet I heard about these people who were doing horrible things to Sadine, who's somebody who I've played, you know, in the lake with, who I've played soccer with, who I've made friendship bracelets with. And I just feel so conflicted. It's like these two stories in my brain are just clashing right in front of me, which is really hard to reconcile. It honestly, it might not even need to be reconciled, but the dealing with that, right? The dealing with that dichotomy is really how I grew during dialogue. You know, it's also really hard to keep your Jewish identity. I found myself wanting to just lay down in front of the Palestinians and from the Egyptians and just say, I am so sorry. This is all my fault. Take all of the burden of the past, 70 years on my shoulders and just have them tell me horrible things about Israel, and I would just cry. That was how I was feeling for a very long time, because it's easier, right? It's easier to just do that. But then I would find myself sitting there, and Sadine, the same one who told me about all these horrible things, would say something anti-Semitic, to be totally honest, and against me. And I'd sit there and I'd say, Sadine, don't say that, right? And that's how I found my Jewish identity through the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, right? I found a way to be Jewish, but also be accepting of the pain that my people honestly have brought upon others, right? I think my parents know this very well, but after I came back from Seeds of Peace, I had a really hard time readjusting to life because of how intense camp is. I kind of, said like, oh, I'll wait to process all these emotions. There's 105 emotions until I get home, and I'll just deal with one at Seeds, because I thought that was the right thing to do. Well, it was my choice. I chose to do that, but then it turned out to be, having to deal with all of those emotions at once. But something that I kept coming back to was, in Judaism, we're taught all of these things about peace in the house, peace in our lands. We're hearing about Israel, this land of milk and honey where people are coming together, and all of these peaceful initiatives. And I'm like, but what we're doing there, what some of my people are doing there, some of the people who worship the same ways that I do are doing, that's not Judaism. That's not what I've been taught. That's not Jewish. And it's very hard for me to reconcile those things. Of course, in 1948, right, we didn't have anywhere to go. Though my Palestinian and Egyptian friends will tell you we had other places to go, we did not have anywhere to go. We only knew where we could go, and that was Israel. And we made the decision out of fear after the Holocaust. And it's a decision that we can't go back on now, obviously, 70 plus years later. But it's also important to recognize we did go into a place that was already inhabited by people. And that's just a reality, right? Whether it was right or not is up for debate. It's been up for debate for forever, and it will continue to be up for debate. But it was so hard for me to reconcile that Jews, people who I stand next to, my parents who I look up to, everybody, all these Jews, and our ancestors did something like that. They almost kicked people out of another place when we'd been kicked out from so many places in history. I mean, Spain after the Golden Age, right? Like, we have been kicked out from everywhere. And we come to the one place where we feel secure. And some of us, decided that it wasn't going to be secure if other people, those Palestinians, were there. And we kicked the Palestinians out. And that's a really hard thing that I've been trying to reconcile for myself, is that we made that decision. Whether the decision is justified or not is, of course, as I said before, up for debate. And I'd be happy to talk about it for hours with you. But it's also the idea of a Jewish identity that is seen through the Palestinian conflict is so much more complicated than just, I'm a Jew, I side with the Israelis because that's my heritage, It becomes more when you become friends with these people.
Wow, thank you, Meirav. That was amazing, and I agree with a lot of what you said. Last question, and this is just for Meirav because Emily already has a job, but what are your plans for the future, and how has Seeds of Peace affected what you want to do, in college and after college?
Seeds of Peace has affected me in a lot of ways. As you can probably tell, my parents definitely saw a physical or mental, emotional change in me after Seeds of Peace. It definitely made me just way more interested in all kinds of conflict resolution, whether it's, in India and Pakistan. I live with these people. I got to compare these conflicts face to face. Something that I like to tell people is just a funny thing is that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is a lot of just people yelling at each other. The Indian-Pakistani conflict was like, I'm a big fan of Indian food. So that's what this is kind of based off of. But in my bunk, all the Indians, Pakistanis brought a ton of food, which is like heaven for me. I was like, yes, woo, like go this. But they would hand me 2 bags of the exact same snack. Like I'm telling you, to the letter, exact same snack. They'd be like, which one's better? And I'm like, they're both the same. Like they both taste delicious. And they're like, no, but the Pakistani one's better. Which just shows you like the difference in types of conflict, but just made me so much more interested in learning about these types of conflicts. Honestly, conflict resolution, I was talking with Julia right before this meeting, but we have conflicts going on right now in America that need a little bit of resolution. And I look forward to trying to utilize dialogue skills that I've gained at Seeds of Peace to try and, you know, empathize and build empathy in our communities, especially in Raleigh. You know, me and my dad went to go clean up yesterday after all of the, you know, protests and the riots and everything. And what I saw there was a lot of the stuff that I saw at Seeds of Peace when we finally understood each other. It was people coming together to help a community be successful. And that's what Seeds is people coming together saying, you know, I'm going to put aside, you know, everything to come and listen to somebody who I vehemently disagree with, right? But it was everybody just standing there. You know, I was cleaning off graffiti yesterday, but the same things happen at CTP. So I look forward to using those skills. Obviously, I want to do more foreign relations stuff in college. That's never going to change. I will forever be interested in that kind of stuff. I'm definitely going to be looking for ways that I can go to Israel and go to Palestine and see my friends again. I miss them a lot. Only way we can talk is on WhatsApp. Or WhatsApp is always blowing up with constant text messages from all of them. They are very talkative people, as am I. That's my future. I see, you know, definitely spreading Seeds of Peace's message, which is just really of this idea of coexistence that I really admire. And it's something that I just want to continue working with. I know Seeds of Peace is going to be a part of, you know, how I live my life for a very long time.
Awesome. Thanks. Emily, I know you have a bunch of resources and links that you wanted to share. So if you want to share those in the chat so people, you know, can keep doing research after. But if anyone has any questions for either of our speakers, you can type them in the chat, or you can, you know, raise your hand or just unmute yourself, or a small enough group. If nobody has any questions, I can ask if either of our speakers have any last things they want to say.
I think Terry has her hand up.
Terry, did you want to say something?
Yeah. Oh, it's so inspiring, Mayrav. I was just crying. And I was just curious about, I guess this, I mean, you know, if you feel that this isn't, you're not comfortable discussing it, but coming off of that experience, I'm just wondering if you've had any opportunities to talk to people who are maybe haven't had that kind of experience, or maybe are fairly maybe strong, maybe are right wing in terms of, you know, of Zionists, and how that experience, has you had an opportunity to how to talk to them after the experience you've had that summer?
Yeah, definitely. I'm just going to respond really quickly. I think Steve Sager just said, how long was the program? It was 2 weeks, pretty sure. Yes. No, 3 weeks.
3.5
3 weeks. 3.5 weeks. I can't even keep track of time. This is me in quarantine. I don't even know what month it is. Okay. And to respond to your question, Terry, there was a guy in my dialogue group who was extremely pro-Israel. He's from New York. He definitely got ganged up on a lot for things he said on dialogue, But I think in terms of, you know, coming back and talking to people, I've always gotten backlash for talking about Israel in public ways. I mean, it's just always happened. It's, you know, when I came back from Seeds, it was really hard for me to make any public statement about it because I had no idea what I was thinking. The crazy thing is that, you know, Seeds of Peace traveling with me, right? I just finished a semester of school in DC called the School for Ethics and Global Leadership, which was an amazing program, the second best decision of my life next to Seeds. And we got to meet Gaith Al-Omari, who was there with Mahmoud Abbas at the Camp David talks. And he actually explained my Israeli-Palestinian views to me for the first time since Seeds. And since then I've been like, oh my gosh, somebody put words to how confused I've been. But nonetheless, I think, you know, you're always going to get backlash for this stuff. And the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is so nuanced, and people don't know how nuanced it is, that if you present anything that, you know, is self-contradictory or anything like that, people are always going to be like, oh, you're an anti-Semite. I've been called an anti-Semite, for my views or anything of that nature. But I don't know, you gotta let it roll off your back and just deal with it. I know it's like a really hard answer, but I think it's also being a seed is a hard thing. It's a hard thing at camp, but it's also a hard thing after camp. There was still a lot of tension. There still is a lot of tension. I know my parents know that sometimes I can get off my phone at night and just be very angry because somebody just started talking about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and saying things that were just, and then I'm just like, oh my God, why can't we just talk about normal things? But that's what I opted into, right? I opted into being uncomfortable and being in these spaces that are not, quote unquote fun to be in over the summer, and to be extremely close friends with people who I disagree with wholeheartedly, right? But I love them because they're my friends. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's how it is. And I see there's a lot of questions in the chat. Okay, how many people were in a dialogue group? It varied between my group. There was 14 kids. I think the maximum is maybe 16. They try to keep them small enough groups that you're not, bursting out of the dialogue hut, but they also try to make sure there's enough people in there, enough representation from, whatever side to create, a good, kind of dialogue space. Anyone else have any questions? I could talk about CZPs forever.
Can I jump in as a parent?
Sure.
First of all, we're so proud of Meirav, obviously. Some of the things that I noticed in Meirav that changed were really an increased capacity to be with conflict without resolution. Like, she came back really clear that there is no one way that we're going to see ourselves out of this, and really uncertain if we ever will. But that she has such an increased confidence in her ability to sit with being uncomfortable, as she said, and just be with people who have really different views and still see their humanity and demand that they see her humanity. That part's harder, but she's still working on that. And I will also say that she came back with a lot of sort of what I would consider like secondhand trauma. And I don't mean to say this at all that the experience wasn't worthwhile. It was unbelievably worthwhile, and we donate and we would send her back a million times over. But I mean, Meirav's had a relatively protected life, a very safe life here, thank God. And the campers that she was with have not, in all different kinds of ways. And it was just a level of exposure and intensity that required months of processing upon her return. And I'm amazed at her resilience and that she didn't leave that experience feeling like, oh boy, like that is just too much. Like, I can't go there. But an even increased desire to say, like, let me be a part of the healing. And her own healing too.
There were a lot of kids after CGPs who I haven't talked to in a while, because they said after CGPs, they're like, I can't do this anymore. I just can't, because it's such an intense program. And everyone's there opts in. They know it's going to be intense, but I don't think I was ever really prepared for CGPs. I don't think there's any way to be prepared for CGPs. It's kind of the best/worst part of it, I think. But that intensity does lead to a lot of feelings that you have to process over a lot of time. There are people who decided to just leave the community. They said, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is too much for me. I'm sorry, I can't do this. But, that's how it, that's your choice, right?
Meirav, Susan Early wants to know, did anybody leave the program?
Nobody leaves the program is over, but very special thing, actually. My friend Orr was invited to speak at the UN 2 days before camp was over. So he was very adamant, told his dad, he was like, Abba, like, I will be back for the last day of Seeds. So he flew all the way to New York, spoke at the UN, and came back, which was really amazing. But nobody leaves before the program's over unless, you know, they've done something to warrant that.
I guess maybe a two-part question. Well,
Sure.
first, beyond the dialogue that you continue with your friends, is there any follow-on to Seeds of Peace? I guess what I'm wondering is, like your friend from Gaza, I assume, is going back to live in Gaza, and you know, who knows what trauma could ensue in the future, or your friend is still going to go through 3 checkpoints, that story you told. So they come to Seeds of Peace, and I mean, your story was beautifully told, and you know, and they form these new friendships, but then they go back to that environment they came from. So other than the dialogue that you continue to have with them, is there any other formal follow-on to, I don't know, try to help them like you had helped to recover, shall we say, from the trauma? I mean, is there any help for them as the whole Palestinian-Israeli conflict continues, and who knows what he'll face in Gaza or she'll face at the checkpoints?
Yeah, that's a really important question. I'll answer really quickly, but then I want to hand it to Emily because she knows a lot more about just the overall program side. They have a lot of programs set up for Israeli Palestinians who are former Seeds in their respective areas. I know I'm very jealous. A lot of my friends have gotten together without me. So sad, but have hung out, done dialogue activities about more current events in their respective areas, about the Palestinian Authority, about Hamas and their relationship to Hamas, about, you know, the IDF, Bibi, the election, all these different types of things. They're constantly, one, hanging out with each other all the time because it's a very small piece of land, and two, Seeds of Peace sets up a lot of opportunities for them to hang out. Yeah, it's also worth noting that a lot of the kids who go to Seeds of Peace, their communities or even their family members don't necessarily approve of them going to Seeds of Peace. And when they come back, a lot of them face a lot of backlash for going there because either they're siding with the Palestinians or they're siding with the Israelis, or they're going to this, you know, Jewish camp, you know, in the middle of nowhere in Maine, and they're gaining all these pro-Israeli ideas, and now they're betraying, you know, all those kind of things. So it's the recovery from Seeds and coming back is honestly probably one of the most hardest things from my experience, but probably one of the most important, honestly, because Seeds is all about what you bring back into the world. You can't stay there. It's a beautiful camp. And all I wanted to do, I mean, I can show you pictures, but I'm not going to because I don't want to embarrass myself. But I am like crying so hard because I don't want to leave. I don't want to leave this perfect place, this perfect bubble where everybody's just loving each other and playing sports and doing music and just having fun. I didn't want to leave that, but you know, like, you can't make change that way, right? You have to come back to your community and speak with people and share the messages that you learned.
Do you know about how many people in total were there and how many of them were from the United States versus outside the US?
I can only give you guesstimates, but I would say there's around 190 campers in total. Remember that there were Indians, Pakistanis, Jordanians. Oh my God, I just mixed up Jordan and Egypt. Jordanians, Egyptians, Israelis, and Palestinians, and then Americans, obviously. The Americans were maybe, I don't know, a sixth of the entirety. We were definitely smaller. The Israeli delegation is very, very large. Palestinian delegation as well is very large. Egyptian delegation's a little bit smaller, so is the Jordanian, but they're still sizable. So I would say definitely like a sixth.
And what's the age range?
The age range is from, it also depends on what country you're coming from. Mm-hmm. For the Americans, 16, 17, sometimes 18-year-olds, depending on which program you're doing. There's also the PS, program at Seeds of Peace, which is for returning campers, and they come back to do even more leadership development. So those were 17, 18-year-olds. The Americans that came with me were 16, 17-year-olds. But there were 14-year-olds there were 15-year-olds, but age doesn't really matter there when you're
Good.
Emily, did you have other stats or things you wanted to add to that?
Sure. Yeah, I can speak a little bit to the follow-up programming. Yeah, I mean, I think a really important point, like Mayrov said, is how difficult it is to transition back to your home community, no matter what community you're going back to. There's this sign at camp that says, "The world as it could be," which I think it's beautiful and a beautiful idea that we're all aspiring to. That at camp we're creating this world as it could be, but it's unfortunately not the real world. So when seeds first go back to their communities, depending on where they live, but in most of the regional hubs where we work, we have programs and dialogues just on this very fact of, how are we transitioning back home? What is it like to talk to your families and your friends, and providing support in those really difficult emotional time. And then beyond that, we continue programming while the seeds are in high school. Like Mayrov said, on lots of different topics. So whether it's political topics, social topics, activism, or just providing further opportunities for the friendships and relationships to strengthen. We continue programming through high school, and then we also have programming for older alumni who are doing, change-making work in their communities, whether it's through politics or they've become teachers and they're making an impact on education, whether they're artists and they're singing and creating art and music about change. Change can be made in lots of different ways. And so what we try to do is continue supporting our alumni as they grow up, as they start their careers, as they make an impact on their community, so that they can create change how they want to.
Emily, could you continue on with, maybe related to that? What is the selection process? Like, do you know that somebody's had their house blown up and therefore, maybe that would be a good candidate, or somebody's, going through checkpoints? What is the process to select these people, and how do they afford to come to Maine, particularly if their family doesn't support them? Do they all have to pay? Are there scholarships for some of these people? Maybe you could address a little of that.
Sure. Yeah, good questions. So the selection process is a little different depending on what country you're coming from. In some countries, we work directly with the school system, actually, and seeds are nominated and selected through their schools. In other countries, it's more independent. Regardless, the seed candidates have to apply. And so they fill out an application, kind of answering like a set of questions about who they are and why they want to come to seeds. So kind of just what we're looking for are people who are invested in their communities, who can speak to their involvement in their community or their wish to be involved, and that they're seeking to become a leader and that they want to create change. Yeah, it's not so much about, what their background is, but more, what are they looking to learn? What are they looking to do? And how could coming to seeds help them, become leaders? People who are really passionate about something or want to create change. That's kind of more of what we're looking for. In terms of tuition, so we do have scholarships, and some families are able to pay full tuition and do so if they're able, but we have a lot of scholarships so that people can access the experience. Yeah.
That comes through contributions that the organization has received.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What percent get accepted? I mean, do you have a lot more applications than you can accept, or?
Yeah. I don't know the exact percentage, but I helped interview the seeds for the American delegation this past year. And sadly, because of coronavirus, we've had to cancel camp for this summer, which is very sad, but we are going to try to do a virtual camp. Yeah, I think it was a pretty slim percentage. I'm trying to remember the numbers.
Okay.
But there's a lot of demand to come. Yeah, and it's hard. I just remember all the kids that I spoke to were all inspiring. We're all incredibly passionate about helping their community. I wish we could take them all, and hopefully we can continue growing. But I'm just so amazed and inspired every single time I hear one of our young people speak, including Mayrav, just like incredible passion and eloquence, and very inspiring when the world doesn't feel very inspiring a lot of the time. Very inspiring to hear these young people speak.
That is inspiring that these kids want to make that kind of change. And considering particularly, as we heard from Mayrav, the background that some of them come from.
It's incredible. Yeah.
Well, thanks everyone. It's a little over an hour now. So if anyone has any final burning questions, you can ask them. Otherwise, we can say goodnight. And thank you, Mayrav and Emily, for speaking. And it was great to hear your experiences.
Thank you. Also, if you have any questions afterwards, I can put my email in the chat, and you can always email me. I'd be happy to talk about it. If you don't have any other burning questions right now and you come up with one like 30 minutes later. But thank you so much for letting me speak. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. Really, really appreciate it, and very inspired.
Do a cut and paste.
Yeah. Well, good night, everyone.